Welcome to Agape Social Justice, where we focus on love, truth, and justice. I can't believe it, you all. This is, I don't know, almost 30 episodes at this point when we're filming. And I never would have imagined that we would have been to this place. I remember last year, it was a long time ago, Margaret Hall was the person who actually contacted me and convinced me to do the show. Initially, I said, no, I can't do that, Margaret. I don't think that's my thing. And long story short, I really felt convicted, if I'm honest with you, because I had been doing conversations in the community. And I think in my own mind, it just kind of felt like I couldn't live up to a journalist standard. And Margaret helped me understand that's not what you're doing. And no one expects you to do that anyway. And now looking back, I'm so grateful that I did this because not only have I learned a lot, it's been able to give other people a platform to share the things that I've been hearing about them. And now you get to hear from some of the incredible people in my life. So shout out to Margaret Hall. Thank you so much for encouraging us to do this show. And I wanted to use this last episode right before we go on break to just do a reflection, thinking about our journey, where we started. Shout out, by the way, to Rick TV. I need you all to follow them on social media. If you still don't know yet, Rick TV is a Black-owned network. They're brand new, and they started when we started. So feel free to go to social media, follow them on YouTube. That's where a lot of our prior episodes are, by the way. If you go to Agape Social Justice on YouTube, it's under our community tab. But I just want to make sure that we're giving some love and support to Rick TV as well. So on today's episode, I have my husband with me again, Walter Kreider, and we're just going to go down memory lane and talk about some of his favorite episodes. I want you to go ahead and reach out. Tell us what some of your favorite episodes are. I will be posting a Google form so you can actually tell me some of your show ideas. If there are people you think I need to reach out to for the fall when we start up again. But just stay in touch with us and buckle up and see what Walter has to say about some of his favorite episodes. So we got started in January 2023.
Yes.
And the amazing Amy Mendel came on. She also was one of the people who encouraged me to get started. We started out talking about exactly what the show focuses on, social justice. And I thought Amy did an exceptional job in terms of keeping it real. You know, that's my word, my phrase, keeping it real, and talking about what that looks like from an ally perspective, what that looks like for us and some of the work that we've done. So tell our viewers, what was your thought when I first came to you and talked about doing this show and what happened when we did the first episode?
Well, I immediately saw it was a great opportunity because one, our daughters are involved in this, and me being the associate producer of the show gives me another opportunity to go ahead and showcase my talents. So, I mean, I knew it was something that was a natural for you, but let's start at the beginning. The music. Your dad provided the theme music, which is just slamming. And then I've got to give it up to Rick Crawford. To Chris Crawford as well in terms of how he created the trailer. I mean, I was actually surprised, that it came out as well as it did. And I mean, it's just excellent. When we provided the photos, but his editing was just crisp and on time. But with Amy, certainly, she certainly kicked it off and set the tone for the show in terms of, as you say, social justice, agape love. And, just how she made herself vulnerable was one of the things that really stood out for me.
I think you brought your notes today.
I mean, time flies. I mean, we did all these episodes in such a short period of time, and I actually forgot about some of the hosts and the great things that they had to say. But one of the things that stood out for me is that when you talked about the Juneteenth celebration in West Bloomfield and how it helped build empathy, and and how she talked about that, it was like, wow, okay, that was Amy. That was Amy Mendel.
That was Amy.
Yeah. And then right after her was probably my favorite, and she really didn't get an opportunity to talk about reparations as much as I thought she would, which seems to be one of her calling cards, was Tia Marie Sanders.
Yeah. So I had to do 2 episodes with Tia Marie because the first episode was more geared toward what we do in the education realm, because both of us are education advocates. There's a lot of work we wanted to do. We partnered with Farmington when there were all those attacks on school board
Yes.
members. Remember that at that time? So we had a different focus for the second episode for Tia Marie, and then we brought her back
Right.
so that
That's right.
she could talk about reparations, and then she went for it. And that's actually one of my favorite episodes, I'll be honest, because it was so informative, especially for people who don't understand what reparations is. They think we're asking for something that shouldn't exist, as if we would be the only people receiving it. And she broke it down in a way that you could clearly understand how that works. Remember, she even talked about how we have a governmental department
Correct.
now
Correct.
that gives people reparations. They call it something else.
We've got to make sure that's on YouTube because I didn't find that one.
Okay.
And I remember the conversation now when you bring it up, but no, I didn't find that one because I watched them all.
Okay.
But yeah, so we have to make sure that certainly shows up on YouTube because that
Okay.
was an important discussion
Well,
for reparations.
I think let's make that one of the episodes that we play when we're on break. When we take the
Yes.
break for the summer and then we have the repeats. They'll definitely be one of the episodes we show.
Yes.
Okay, what else did you like?
Well, like you said, Margaret Hall, who brought forth the idea, her being a Black historian and an educator, which was really impressive. And one of the things that she said was that, the village used to work. It's like, wow, it used to work. And then she took us down memory lane
Yeah.
in terms of how we respected our elders and those type of things. And we talked about the good old days in terms of when kids were allowed to be kids, and that with the violence that's going on and whatnot, and young people sort of have a dismal look upon their future, that we're actually getting to the point, or we will get to the point if we continue down this road with that of gun violence, that why even have children? That's what really stood out for me with her conversation. And then obviously her brother.
Yeah. Well, before you get off Margaret, let me just say, Margaret is one of those people you don't know because so Amy, Margaret, and I, and several other people are part of the West Bloomfield Social Justice Committee. But when Margaret speaks, she's one of those people where you just stop what you're doing and you just listen,
Yes.
right? Because it's like Mama Margaret's talking, right? Auntie Margaret's talking. And she drops wisdom like that all the time. And so I'm not even surprised really that when Bart came on, he just continued, and followed suit with their family. I mean, can you imagine being at one of their family gatherings?
And their mom just celebrated 100 years.
I mean, just incredible things. So, yeah, I really appreciate that wisdom. I want to get back to that village. I think we definitely have to show that again. We definitely have to air that episode again because we want to help people to understand what we're talking about in terms of what we used to have and how we know we can get back to that love for one another. The whole premise of AGAPA social justice, that love for one another. And as we better connect, I think we can resolve some of those issues that we see in the community,
Yes,
like the violence. So let's talk about Bart. That was another one of your favorite episodes, I know.
Yeah, very much so, very much so. And probably what I enjoyed the most was all the history that he tied into it. When he talked about his great-grandfather, Homer E. Thomas, who worked for FDR. He was a driver, and essentially, he was essentially Secret Service. He was a forerunner of the Secret Service, for FDR in terms of being a driver, and how he has been celebrated, his great-grandfather over there in Liberia. I mean, that was just powerful. It's like, wow.
I know. I was like, we have to have him on for Black History Month. Like, we have to.
Certainly. Another one for me, and obviously it hits a sore spot as relates to our friend who completed the act of suicide, Ken Rochelle, when we interviewed Harold Love, my former boss, retired captain of the Michigan State Police, who is now a behavioral therapist who specializes, but also treats any and everybody, but also specializes in that of first responders as relates to mental health. I mean, that was a real intimate conversation. And then shortly thereafter, Ken, Ken completed the act of suicide, who's also a retired Michigan State trooper.
Yeah,
So
let's pause there for a
yeah,
moment because I feel like you just dropped a lot. So I remember when Harold was on, and I remember thinking, I hope this episode saves lives. Like literally,
yeah,
that was the intention, right? I
mhm,
want people to know Harold, because he's an amazing person and he brings value to the community. I
yes,
want people to get his services, but I genuinely feel like he can help save lives, especially in the first responder community. And then to have done that episode and have so many people watch it. People have shared it. Um, and then this happened. I remember, I think you walked in the room. I was on a meeting or something, and you told me about Ken, and I think we were just all in shock.
yes.
Because it's like another incredible person who you don't think will end up doing something like this, but it just goes to speak to the importance of understanding mental health challenges, mental illness, physical illnesses, that happen that can spiral things for people. And for me, that segues into another episode that I want to see replay, and that is with Keon Payton.
Yes,
I mean,
yes.
there's an episode where he talked about his personal life, and that's absolutely amazing too, that people need to hear. But also when he talked about mental health and in particular adverse childhood experiences, ACEs
Hmm.
is what it's called.
Right.
And a lot of people aren't familiar with that. And one of the things I would like to see is that we do a little bit more work with first responders, especially with our nonprofit Police to Protectors. I like, as you know, for us to do something where we can have more of those conversations, right? Bring in more of those professionals, whether it's Harold, who can actually sit down and be the person who has the conversations with you, or we bring in a Keon and we get what I really want, viewing audience, what I really want is for us to be able to get corporate sponsors, government grants, where we can bring in Keon and he can train trainers so that we have more people in the community who know how to understand ACEs and explain it to other people. And did you know that if we focus on children at this point, no matter what their score is, there's a way that we can create positive experiences that can kind of counter some of those negative experiences that they've had in their childhood. So things like that really get me fired up. Another initiative that I know Keon would like to see is for, can you imagine if Oakland County or the state of Michigan becomes a trauma-informed county, trauma-informed state? Like, just imagine what that would look like and the things that we could do in terms of mental health.
And don't forget Alexandria Hughes,
Oh,
who
yes.
also talked about human rights and mental health,
Yes.
being an activist in that space, and also a behavioral therapist.
Yes.
I mean, to be able to put them all on one show, and certainly that's one that needs
Oh,
to
that's
repeat
good.
this summer. With Alexandria Hughes and the work that she's doing. One of the things that she made a point that I made note of is that hoping things will change is not taking action.
Right.
You know,
That's
and,
so true.
and oftentimes we can sit back and hope, and actually talk, and side, what do you call it, backseat quarterback and whatnot. But that's not really taking any action.
It's not. You know what it reminds me of though? Have you seen those memes that's going around and these posts where people are like, um, uh, praying, talking about praying. I don't want to hear any more prayers, or prayers does you no good. Everybody's
Right.
got some version of one of those memes now. And I'm like, initially I got offended, right? I'm a Christian, I got offended. And I'm like, but I get what they're saying, because for me, and then I started posting like, okay, Christians, pray, but then get off your knees and go do something, right? Because oftentimes we sit back and we act like we're defeated, like we can't do anything about it. We are the people to create the change, right? And that's kind of what I want people to understand. So yeah, I'm glad you lifted up that quote from her, because it is so true.
And then Troy Evans, the hip hop pastor from Grand Rapids. He had a story for us in terms of redemption.
Oh yeah.
And what was so ironic about his story is that when he was talking about the gangbanger era that he was involved in, and actually he was at the nexus of, in terms of Grand Rapids, I remember that because I was the state police up in Grand Rapids at that particular time. But he brought so much forth in terms of what they've done, what they're doing, what hustle, pray, and eat,
Mm.
and redemption through Jesus Christ. I mean, that was just powerful. And then a statement that he made that resonated with me is that there's no PTSD program for gangbangers.
Oh wow.
Yeah. So when we talk about incarceration, that's something that certainly has to be dealt with. We talk about trying to rehabilitate someone, because that's something that's that's overlooked. We don't even pay attention to that kind of thing. Let's just lock them away. But what about the PTSD? And obviously he has experienced it, and through Christ he's gotten through it. But we need more of that. We need to address those issues within the criminal justice system, so that individuals can become productive, and not just productive, but leaders like he has become, within his community and his church community. So yeah, Troy Evans was great.
Can I tell you, before you go to the next one, I remember Troy talking about when he went into the church and the people just kind of coming, you know how we do,
Loving on him.
loving on him, and good intentions, right? But for people who've gone through that, especially if you have PTSD, it's a bit much. And I remember thinking like, I need to kind of talk, because I'm like that. I'm instantly wanting to hug a lot of people at church. And I feel like maybe we need to send that message to religious institutions and say, hey, people are coming here who are wounded. They have PTSD, and we need to approach it differently. So I remember that episode, and that's standing out for me. And another person who I think about in terms of redemption and redeeming his life and doing a lot of work, your boy Daryl Woods.
Yes, Daryl Woods. Yeah, I love Daryl. One of the things, like we were at an event, and some of my former bosses, post commanders, and inspectors were there, and Daryl, when I introduced him, he said, "Yeah, we met in prison." And their eyes just got buck wild, like, "Oh, I met in prison." But that's exactly where Daryl and I met, over there at Ryan Correctional Facility, and he was doing an excellent job. And what he did in there obviously paved the way for him to be released after 28 years. And viewing audience, you certainly have to tune in to Daryl Woods in that particular episode, because the brother brings forth so much wisdom, and more importantly brings forth so much hope, because we all know people, if not personally, within our families, that are incarcerated, that have been incarcerated. And it just shows that, the system can work if we have that love for those individuals, and people like Daryl Woods who come out and then provide a way for other individuals to follow in terms of correcting the system that's broken as it relates to that of incarceration and the criminal social justice system.
Yeah.
Daryl was great.
So before you become a headline, because I know you got a movie script and TV shows and all that stuff that's going to be coming out, I don't want this to be a headline. Clear up what you mean about you met in prison.
Oh. No, I was part of a program where we brought young people into the correctional facility, and it wasn't a scared straight situation where we were trying to scare them, but they actually had an opportunity to relate and connect, with the future returning citizens that were incarcerated, and find out some of the bad decisions that they made, and then some of the things that they've learned while being incarcerated.
And some of them are there and they're innocent.
Right. And so, a lot of them are innocent.
Right. Okay. I just wanted to.
And Daryl was innocent, and and he's quite candid in terms of that, he was guilty as it relates to his background, but he was innocent as it related to that particular criminal incident.
Right. Absolutely. Which is one of the reasons why I'm passionate about criminal justice, not just the school to prison pipeline and what I see happening in the schools, but because I know there's so many people who are either falsely accused, people sitting and rotting away because they simply don't have cash money, to get out of a jail. And the list goes on and on and on of the number of issues that we have. But yeah, that was an incredible episode too. So we have to make sure we air that one as well.
And of
What?
course, Dale Brown, got to talk
Oh
about
yeah,
Dust.
yeah.
The internet defensive tactics sensation, personal friend of mine for the last 20 some odd years, who brought forth illuminating information as it relates to personal protection. I just can't say enough in terms of what he has done, what he's doing. And certainly that is an episode that you need to tune into for your own personal safety and for safety of your community. By all
And
means.
might I add too, I remember, shoot, I don't know how long ago it was in Bloomfield Hills School District. Remember, I was running African American Parent Network and a Saturday school that was attached to it, and we brought these programs in, and Dale was one of the people that we brought in. Do you
Yes,
remember that? He has the Scout Survival Program, as you know,
Survival
and so
Scouts.
Survival Scouts, and people signed up, brought their children in, and they learned self-defense tactics, which not only is it to help your children in terms of learning how to keep themselves safe or defend themselves, but it actually gave kids a higher level of confidence, I thought, in
Yes.
terms of what they did.
Mhm.
But you do some work with Dale outside of him coming on the show, and you just launched an online program, right?
Right, he has an online defensive tactics program. You can go to thiscansaveyourlife.com. Thiscansaveyourlife.com. Mm-hmm.
Okay, all right.
Of course, you got to talk about my show. We got to talk about my show.
Oh yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah. Got to talk about
Which I
my
keep
show.
saying to our kids, have you watched Daddy's show yet?
And not to rehash the whole conversation, but one thing that I wish I had added, I wish I had talked more. I wish I had talked about my TV show, as we
Um,
call Without Prejudice. And Without Prejudice, what our show as it relates to AGAPA social justice, we talked about that of law enforcement and the African American and getting involved in social justice and why we aren't involved in social justice. Well, my TV show deals exactly with that.
TV show coming out.
Yeah, TV show coming out. That's right. What it deals with is that it's a story that could be tomorrow's breaking news. An African American retired state trooper runs into that of a biased white police officer and the unfortunate happenings, and his daughter is killed in a traffic stop that goes bad. And our African American state trooper is ultra conservative, living the American dream, or so he thinks it is. And he has been inculcated and assimilated into that of law enforcement and believes it wholeheartedly. But when the tables are turned, he has to reconcile his previous life in terms of that of law enforcement with the reality of social justice is needed and correction is needed in that of law enforcement. So that's all I wanted to say about.
No,
Wish
yeah.
I had mentioned as it relates to
I'm glad
the
you added
TV
that
show
in.
Without Prejudice.
Yes, I'm glad you added that in. Coming soon to Netflix near
That's right.
you.
And then, of course, we can't end the conversation without talking about Justice Bernstein.
Oh yes. Hmm.
I mean, what really stood out for me with him is that he was so genuine as it relates to his apology and what he learned from the incident that he was involved in. And he really couldn't talk about it and go into detail because the Supreme Court had censored him as it relates to that conversation. But he revealed enough for me to see that his heart was really involved. And then fast forward, when he went ahead and stepped aside for a moment to go ahead and seek mental health counseling
Mm.
and took a hiatus from the bench. That said a lot about his character for me, and that this journey has been a real journey and has been one of reflection, and that I honestly believe that the changes that needed to be made within his personality are being made right now, and that he certainly deserves to continue to be, our Supreme Court justice.
I'm glad you mentioned that. I just recently talked to a member of his team and was, checking on him to see how he's doing. And, there are a lot of people out there who still, they don't believe it. I don't know if everybody ever will. There's certain things I'm not willing to share publicly in terms of what I know from behind the scenes and seeing his heart and seeing the remorse and, seeing what he went through. But part of what took a toll on him, people don't know, is that he was going to all of these different meetings and meeting with all these different groups. And folk can be brutal.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, we can.
And that was a lot to take in. But one thing that I do give him credit for is that he owned the mistake. He made amends with the people who he had harmed. He tried to make amends with people indirectly. I had no idea, honestly, that I would be a part of this group of people leading a movement, quote unquote, against him, when this happened. But I really felt it was important that we didn't let a moment like that go. After I heard my friend Ronnie and a young lady, Cassidy, speak at a meeting, and it convicted me so much I couldn't sleep at night. And I said, no, we have to do something about this. And then it, kind of spiraled and press conference and, all that kind of stuff, and then led to the meetings in the community. And as you know, Daryl talked about how they had a healing circle. And even though I wasn't there, I'll never forget, just that moment that he took, to kind of genuinely cry with grown men who had served time. If you take that in for a moment, that's redemption. And for me, as we close out, I think one of the things that I've wanted people to understand is that I'm unapologetic when it comes to not just my faith, but I'm unapologetic in terms of what I believe God has called me to do. And part of that is to hold people accountable, is to seek change. And I know that's not always easy. You know that with, standards and expectations that I have, it's not easy for me to do it. It's not easy for people to accept it, but I'm unapologetic about it because I feel like that's attached to my calling and my purpose in this world. And that's what this show is all about. We want people to make sure that they have unconditional love. And part of that is seeking to make sure that we are making change, right?
And as we close this out, and you're talking about faith, you've got to talk about our pastor, Andrew Kim.
Yes.
And I didn't find that episode on YouTube.
What?
No,
Okay, we have to make sure that we
Yeah,
have to make sure.
talk about pastor.
Yeah, so just real quick before we close out, one of the other things, and I'll talk directly to you, one of the other things that Walter and I have done is that we've been very intentional in terms of our walk. And that means that we don't only associate with predominantly Black churches. We have actually been a part of predominantly white churches. We happen to be at a church that's very diverse. And I just want to tell you that our pastor, Andrew Kim, is an amazing person. He's part of the AAPI community. There's an episode on that. So if you don't know what it means, tune in. But I just wanted to say that Walter and I have been thoroughly impressed with Andrew Kim and all of the work that he's doing. And there's an initiative, by the way, that we're hosting at Kensington Church. It's actually, by the time this episode airs, it will already have happened. But take a look on Agape Social Justice. I'll be giving you more information about what's called the Michigan Hub, how we can partner for racial healing, solidarity, and justice. We're at the end of the episode already, you all, but thank you so much for tuning in for all these weeks. We will be back. Looking forward to seeing you in the fall.
With merchandise.
Yes, with our merch, because I'd have people get on me about that. So we'll come back with merch. But thank you so much. We are incredibly thankful. Please give financial support as well. Thank you.